You're listening to the Money Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast. How we doing? You know, Dawn Staley had a moment with the media, and just want to step into that and find out with Dawn as to her frustration communicating with national media. And really, the whole was circum around Paige Bueckers getting extended coverage in the media, and also Caitlin Clark. And you got two national prominent figures in those two players. And Dawn really was frustrated with the fact that she was back-to-back champions, and that was overshadowed. And does Dawn have a point? Is there a media saturation between Caitlin Clark and Paige Bueckers? Excuse me, I said Bueckers the last time, but it's Bueckers. Is there a challenge there? Is there something that Dawn is actually seeing or saying? I would say it could be just depending on the perspective that you want to take it from, right? Because at the end of the day, and there was another national media analyst that kind of said, look, here's the deal. I mean, we've been following Paige since high school. We run the stories. We could run a Caitlin Clark story. You're going to get more coverage. We can also run a Paige Bueckers story. You're going to get more coverage. And then you can run a story on South Carolina women's basketball. And you're not going to get as much coverage. Whoop, I almost dropped my coffee there. But you're not going to get as much coverage, right? So here's the thing that really stuck out with me as I saw Dawn. It was almost a meltdown moment, right? Almost a meltdown moment she had. And it's been a tough year for Dawn, right? So whenever you get a situation and, you know, you got to look at that, and you got to look at Mylasia Fu Wiley. Correct. I got to get that pronunciation. And guys, I'm going to get better with the names. But you want to look at that and you want to say to yourself, guys, look, is it balanced coverage? No. Right? So you got Money Mike, right? You got the Money Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast. And I'm coming to you from Too Hot Media Group, right? Which falls under the umbrella of Rock Nation, right? We're right in the grassroots of coming right underneath that. And that's where I go with Rock Nation, right? So I got to look at this a little bit differently than most, because when you look at the balance of the media and how many African American media members you have and how many Caucasian media members you have or other nationalities, the playing field is not a balanced playing field. And what does that mean? If you've got, let's say you've got in the media that's covering NCAA basketball, and you've got 45 reporters that are going to cover that, or 45 members of the media, or in this case, as I do with Too Hot Media Group, being a correspondent communicating directly on the WNBA. Well, if you got 45 media members and only 3 are African Americans, well, 42 are writing a story, and really they're telling what they see, and you have 3, so the viewer coverage won't be the same, right? It won't be the same. And so with Dawn, it really has changed, right? And when you look at it, you hear a lot about college, right? And this thing between college and pro, right? So you got a pendulum swing that you got, because normally, as I mentioned before, when you go pro, you really don't continue with college coverage, but it's all integrated, I guess vertically integrated. So you'll have UConn and WNBA, you have Iowa and WNBA, but the records and everything really haven't been broken, or the coverage. And we talk a lot about attendance, right? And I wanted to address that. And let me tell you why I want to address the attendance, because, you know, I'm looking at this and I'm looking at Indiana, and I look at it. Indiana's done a good job, right? I mean, but for the Indiana Fever, there's no doubt about it. Iowa, I don't know about Indiana women's basketball. I don't know where they stand. I know they're looking at Iowa and what Caitlin Clark has done with the attendance. And so it's really not about how good you play anymore. It's about how much fanfare you have, which is rightfully so. And that's why I talk about Angel Reese, and that's why I know Angel Reese is crushing the game. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you can get up to 30, 40, 50 million followers, you're crushing the game, right? So with Dawn, going back to Dawn, with Dawn really afterwards came back and thanked the local media, right? Because Dawn has had a rough year, okay, with Mylasia Fu Wiley. And, you know, the parents and being local, I mean, that's like a daughter to her, right? And so she's torn. Dawn is torn, and she just had an emotional moment, and with the attendance. And that's where, you got to look at it from both sides, right? Is the media right? Somewhat. Is the attendance and what reported. Once you get through this year, and here's where I'm going with these two ball players, because I got to cover the WNBA. So you're gonna have a lot of people saturate coverage on Paige Bueckers and Caitlin Clark, right? That's gonna happen. That's the way the game is supposed to be played. Now my job is I got 144, 160 other WNBA players that I have to cover, right? So I'm going to be able to saturate the market with a lot of information, and I really believe Dawn Staley belongs in the WNBA, and it's just not her game. I don't believe a college coach that has the passion and heart to coach as much as Dawn. When you get players, you got to buy them, you got to pay for them, and you got to get them there, right? And what's the winning goal, right? Gino. And Gino's not going to let you down, right? Gino's going to rub it in. Gino's the type that pours salt on a wound, right? So I'm listening to Gino there, and Gino's like, yeah, well, you got a statue over there, Don, with Asia Wilson, and you got, you're really trying to do something. I mean, you got a couple championships, Don, but don't get it confused, right? Because when Gino counts them up and he got all his players, what do we got, about 30 champions in here, right? They got 30 national championship players, and he was like, at UConn, you win a championship, you're not getting any statue, right? Because we got too many champions here, right? So UConn basketball is the standard, no doubt about it, right? UConn women's basketball, Gino, okay, Coach Gino, School of Women's Basketball Business, right? He's got guys built the league, right? So you look at that pendulum, and you always wonder, can the African-American player draw as much or break the attendance records? And they'll tell you no. But that's why you got Money Mike. Because, when he gets into attendance, and I've been listening to this, I've been going, okay, all right, they got a stadium. They drew 56,000. I'll tell you what, folks. If you run this back-to-back, right? I mean, you got Don in there, but if you run this back-to-back, Golden State Bueckers, right? I'll tell you about this, because if they got Kiki and Juju, because you guys always say, can Kiki and Juju, can they really draw attendance, right? They don't draw attendance. I'll tell you something right now, and you heard it from the Money Mike syndicated radio podcast. This is my Kathy Engelbert challenge. I got to get better with names, but this is my Kathy Engelbert challenge, right? If you take Caitlin and Juju, where I'm from in California, you put them on that Bay Area corridor going up there, let's say to Levi Stadium, and you want to play a game, they'll draw 60,000 fans in there, folks. They will draw 60,000 fans if you let the Bueckers play right there, right now, today, right? We'll crack that record that they got, and all of a sudden that media coverage is going to swing, because if they get Kiki and Juju, it's a wrap. It's a wrap, right? And some people with the media, one thing I know about media, and there's a code of ethics, right? There's a code of ethics, and there's certain things you cover, and there's just certain things you leave alone, right? If I told you the number of meltdowns I've seen watching college practices, if I told you the number of meltdowns I've seen between players in the NFL, but some of that stuff, I don't report that, because that's not why it's there. That's not relationship building, and that's not going to help the players establish that, right? So you got something here that you got to really just move to the next needle to be able to say, what can we do and how can we do it, right? Because at the end of the day, I got 30,000 people that would watch the Golden State Bueckers. And what do I mean? I got San Jose people are going to come down. You got San Francisco. You got Sacramento. You got Reno. You got Redding, Chico. I mean, we put 30,000 in there every night, and we'll crack that record. Why? Because the Bay Area's just got too many people, one, right? There's too many people. And two, when you talk about WNBA and not having a team between Sacramento and, going all the way down to Golden State and Lake Up, the owner, we'll put 30,000 people in there, folks. I'm telling you, they're already sold out, right? So you look at this thing and you want to say to yourself, right, because I go back to Don and with the coverage, right? And the coverage needs to be right, because nobody wants to talk about in California. The Bueckers are already sold out. They sold out and didn't have a player, right? Think about that, folks. They don't have Caitlin Clark. They don't have Paige Bueckers. They do not have Paige Bueckers, but they're sold out. And when you live in a market like I do, and I know the California market, we could crush the numbers, folks. We could crush the numbers. What I'm telling you, if the Golden State Bueckers, Kathy Engelbert, schedules a game in Levi Stadium, we'll do 60,000 people easy. The Bay Area can do 30,000. They're going to play down there at the Chase Center, and you're going to have these things, and you're going to be there, but you got to understand how many people we have and how many people are in that corridor, coming Sausalito. I mean, you could just come just everywhere, coming out of the Wine, the Sonoma. Folks, we got more people that are coming in there. Did Kathy Engelbert make a great decision? Yes, because it's going to be so impacted, she's going to have to double back to Sacramento and put a franchise in there, right? And that's where I think Dawn Staley belongs in the WNBA, right? Because no matter what more she does in college, she's not going to get the recognition she deserves. She's just going to be a coach that had a bunch of great players, right? But when you go to the flip side, you got to look at it. And in the media, I got to respect it, because you can't go in there and say, I want more, when your numbers don't speak for it, right? So that's a marketing challenge for South Carolina women's basketball, right? Because you got to ask yourself, do they market as well as UConn basketball? Do they market as well as Iowa basketball, right? And there's a lot of things that can happen in the media. I mean, there's a code of ethics, right? And you see a lot of players, do they treat the African-American women differently? Yeah, do people get allowed to get away with stuff? I heard something today, and we got a code of ethics, folks. And there's a code that I follow, and I've always done it, and I was kind of mentored through it, right? In the NFL, one thing you don't do, you don't shoot the bench, right? You don't shoot the bench when a player and a coach are getting into it. That's kind of the code, right? There's certain things that you got to draw the line, right? The other thing you don't do, when a player's injured, you don't talk about a player, and you don't really talk about that player's family or anything like that, right? Because the player's injured. And I heard something come across, and this one always surprises me, right? I heard something about Juju Watkins and attendance and everything. And I'm already telling you, got Kiki from Stanford, you got Juju Watkins coming from USC. If they're both going back-to-back to the Bueckers take the pick this year, you get Juju next year. You know what? It's a 30,000-seat arena is needed, because they're going to average 30,000 fans a game, right? So the records that you think you see now are about to be broken, right? And once that gets silenced and you no longer have that, then the media coverage has to swing back over and say, wait a minute, you got Lakeup, the owners, getting 30,000 fans a night. That's how much you have. And how does that determine by the ticket price, right? And they're going to pay more, and they just need seats, right? And they did this without even having Caitlin Clark or Paige Bueckers. So where's the pendulum swing between Angel Reese, Kiki, right, Juju, the African-American players? And guys, listen, somebody said, I heard something, people said Juju Watkins' teammates are leaving USC. This is where I go, there's a code, right? And there's certain things you do in the media and you don't. I would never report that somebody's teammates is leaving when, one, you don't have a source, two, you don't understand the business, okay, of the WNBA. And what do I mean by the business of the WNBA? As an experienced media member, I can tell you, I believe Juju Watkins has played her last college game. I really do. Because there's no reason to take a player like Juju Watkins, who was injured, and then go put her back with USC to win a championship. So those players that are portaling and leaving, they're aware of what the potential could be as to Juju may not come and play, right? And you look at the swing. Here's what I want to tell you about swings in the media, and you look at players, right? So you look at Gino with Juju, he got blown out by 30. He got blown out by 30. Without Juju, he won, right? So you got to look at that and say that's a 50-point swing. That's how valuable Juju Watkins. Juju Watkins could swing a game by 50 points, right? So when she wasn't on that court, they made it down, right? Sweet 16 got on the way down there, but they couldn't go any further. And that's part of the game, folks. That's how it works, right? So you got to look at that and say to yourself, is the media saturated on a few players? Yes. Does it need to balance out? Yeah, but in this world of social media and every way we have to report media today, because it's a wide open field and you got to keep a standard. I try to have a code of ethics, right? Because I never want to talk about a player like C-Mac, who's Christian McCaffrey, 49. The guy's injured, right? So why would I start talking about him, his family, anything like that? You can't do it, right? And that's the code that gets broken in the WNBA, and that's what Dawn's talking about, right? Everybody's breaking the code on the media standard, right? Because they're swinging this thing to see how many views and clicks and everything you can get, but they're forgetting about the standard of basic reporting, right? Because there's no editor, there's nobody to proof your story, there's nobody, you just can hit a button and go, and that makes it tough. But that's a part of the game, and you got to adjust to it, right? Because this is the day and age we live in. This is the Money Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast. We're coming to you, Too Hot Media Group under the umbrella of Rock Nation, and we're going to get it right. I can guarantee you that. So you stay tuned. I promise you it's going to be an exciting year. I like two players I'm going to cover. I like Rivers and James out of North Carolina. That's my picks, man, for the guards in the draft. I love those two, and I'll put some more coverage on it. But you stay tuned, and we'll bring it to you with a standard, right? And we got a code of ethics that we got to follow. And you guys have mentioned, hey, Mike, you're kind of just going a little quickly. Yeah, because I got to stick to the who, what, when, where, and why, and also be politically correct. This is the Money Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast. We thank you for joining us. You stay tuned. We're going to have a great WNBA season.